requesting for a lockdown. Economic centers in operation from today. Total COVID-19 vaccine doses imported to Sri Lanka exceeds 20 million. America's Food and Drug Administration grants full approval to the Pfizer vaccine.
We start today's bulletin off with a somber note, with former Finance Minister Mangala Samaraweera has passed away at the age of 65. He was receiving treatment at a private hospital in Colombo after he tested positive for COVID-19. The former minister was receiving treatment at a private hospital in Colombo after he tested positive for COVID-19. Mangala Samaraweera has served as the Minister of Finance from 2017 to 2019. He was also the Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2005 to 2007 and from 2015 to 2017. It has been revealed that a group of over 450,000 people over the age of 60 have not received any vaccine during an investigation conducted by village-level field officers, including Gram Niladaris.
Secretary to the Ministry of Home Affairs, M. Chitrananda, said that it has now been confirmed that 450,539 people have not received even one dose of any vaccine. The Secretary to the Ministry of Home Affairs stated that a special vaccination program will be launched today for those over 60 who have not received the vaccine. He said the Army and the health sector would jointly implement the program. Based on the information received, steps have been taken to vaccinate those who have not been vaccinated through mobile vaccinations, for those who are unable to visit the vaccination centers, and for others at the vaccination centers. The Secretary to the Ministry further stated that steps will be taken for vaccination in each area. The Secretary to the Ministry further stated that steps will be taken for vaccination based on the requirements of each area. Meanwhile, another 1 million Sinopharm doses manufactured were brought down to Sri Lanka this morning on board a Sri Lankan Airlines flight from Beijing, China. The stock of COVID-19 vaccines received by the country has exceeded 20 million.
The government has decided to open all economic centers situated island-wide today and tomorrow.
Minister of Agriculture Mahindananda Alufgamage said economic centers will remain open over the next 2 days only for wholesale trading, adding farmers will be allowed to transport their produce to economic centers today and tomorrow. Queues of lorries carrying vegetables were witnessed in the Dabula town since this morning, following the reopening of the Dabula dedicated economic center. Although the economic center in Tambutegama was operational today, large crowds were not witnessed. The dedicated economic center in Kappiripola was open for trading today, but a drop in the number of wholesale traders were reported. The Manikumara Economic Center in Katukastota was also open today. The Manning Market in Colombo and the Paliguda Fish Market were also open for wholesale trading today.
In one of the headline-making stories, Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dallas Alhok elaborated on the highly controversial letter directed to the President by representatives of 10 constituent parties of the government with regard to imposing a lockdown in the country. The Minister expressed the following views responding to questions posed during the Cabinet media briefing held today.
Several ministers had directed a letter to the President requesting for a lockdown to be imposed, even after agreeing during cabinet meetings to not impose such a lockdown. Multiple ministers, including Vimal Veerawansha and Udaya Gammampila, were signatories of the letter. What is this two-faced policy?
Contradictory opinions and ideas are common within any alliance in politics across the world. Even in our country, this is not the first time such a matter has occurred. This will not be the last either. Our government will not degrade itself so as to talk about internal conflicts. We are a strong and healthy government. On the other hand, this government will not suppress the expression of opinion. Various debates will emerge. To my knowledge, the cabinet meeting in question had lasted until 10:10 p.m. that day. The party leaders' meeting had been scheduled for 8 p.m. Since the cabinet meeting was dragged on, Ministers Vimal Veerawansha, Udaya Gammampila and Vasudeva Nanayakkara had left the cabinet meeting around 9 p.m. This specific matter was the final one on the agenda. Therefore, they were not notified to the decisions made on that front. That decision had been made during the other discussion. It is nothing to panic about. Even in the past, similar matters arose.
එහෙමනම් දැන් මේ පොහොට්ටුවේ ලේකම්වරයාද ලෙඩ වෙලා ඉන්නේ රෝගී වෙලා ඉන්නේ පොහොට්ටුවද
සාගර කාර්යවසම් මැතිතුමා කියලා කියන්නේ අපේ සන්දාන ආණ්ඩුවේ ප්‍රධාන
Sagara Karyavasam is the General Secretary of the main party which forms the alliance. He expressed his views, but that does not hinder our unity. The opposition saw an opportunity during the no-confidence motion. However, when the results of the motion were released, we saw such a conflict does not exist. We have all worked tirelessly to develop this government and to make it function. That includes Vimal Veerawansha, Udaya Gammampila, Vasudeva Nanayakkara and even Sagara Karyavasam. We are one political family.
වාසුදේව නානායක්කාර මැතිතුමාත් එහෙමයි සාගර කාර්යවසම් මැතිතුමාත් එහෙමයි. ඉතින් අපි එක දේශපාලන පවුලක්.
The Cabinet of Ministers approved the proposal to import 300,000 litres of medical oxygen weekly instead of importing 120,000 litres of oxygen monthly. The decision was made as the number of patients who are dependent on oxygen has increased due to the spread of the COVID-19 virus variant. Earlier, approval was to import 120,000 litres of oxygen per month to ensure the supply of liquid medical oxygen to the COVID-19 patients in critical condition. Meanwhile, cabinet approval has been granted to purchase local organic fertilizer for the 2021-2022 Maha cultivation season. Accordingly, bids have been called from local fertilizer manufacturers licensed by the National Fertilizer Secretariat. Meanwhile, a report on the number of vehicles that belong to the government was tabled to the Cabinet of Ministers today. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers decided to utilize the repairable vehicles not in running condition. During the Cabinet media briefing, it was announced that 5,533 state vehicles are not in running condition. Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dallas Alhok confirmed today that there will not be any cuts imposed to the salaries of both state and private sector employees. No member of the government has ever proposed or even requested to cut the salaries of any employee in the private or public sector. I responsibly deny such media reports.
තෙරපීමකින් කිසියම් අරමුදලක් හදන්න කිසිසේත් උත්සාහ ගන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ සියලු මාධ්‍යවාර්තා වගකීමෙන් හසනේ මම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරනවා.
Fishermen who are involved in freshwater fishing industry at the Victoria Reservoir are facing difficulties selling their catch in the face of the country being locked down with the prevailing pandemic situation.
300 families are engaged in freshwater fishing in the Victoria Reservoir near the Ambakote, Alutwatta, Orotota Ambagahalanda and Kumukka Dura ports. The fishermen say that even if the fish are caught, they are facing difficulties in selling their catch. Our livelihood is selling fish caught from this reservoir. Even now we can harvest the fish, but we face difficulties in taking those stocks to the market due to the lockdown. Many of these families are living amidst many hardships. Therefore, I kindly request the authorities to intervene and provide us some relief.
A wild elephant has encroached to the Mihindupura and Senanayakapura areas in Ampara this morning.
Wildlife officials suspect the elephant has encroached to Ampara town from the Buddhangala sanctuary. As of now, the elephant is at the timber storage area belonging to the State Timber Corporation in Mihindupura. The police and the officials of the Wildlife Department is deployed on guard at the location.
Now on to international news making headlines. The website of the US Food and Drug Regulatory Administration has published a statement regarding its complete approval of the Pfizer vaccine.
It reads, today the US Food and Drug Administration approved the first COVID-19 vaccine. The vaccine has been known as the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine and will now be marketed as Comirnaty for the prevention of COVID-19 disease in individuals 16 years of age and older. The vaccine also continues to be available under emergency use authorization, including for individuals 12 through 15 years of age and for the administration of a third dose in certain immunocompromised individuals.
Let's now take a look at the global COVID-19 situation.
The Australian government's pandemic modelling advisor says the country can proceed with its reopening plans when the country reaches 70 to 80% vaccination levels, even as some states hinted they may not ease border curbs if Sydney fails to control its Delta outbreak. The Melbourne-based Doherty Institute said the country's focus must shift to limiting the number of COVID-19 deaths and hospitalizations from its current zero cases strategy when at least 70% of the country's population above age of 16 is fully vaccinated. Currently, 30% of Australia's adult population has been fully vaccinated, while 53% have had at least one dose. New Zealand today recorded its highest increase in COVID-19 cases since April last year, but authorities said the numbers were not rising exponentially and the majority of the cases were still centred in Auckland, where the recent outbreak started. The South Pacific nation's virus-free run since February ended last week after an outbreak of the highly contagious Delta variant of the coronavirus erupted in Auckland, New Zealand's largest city, and quickly spread to the capital, Wellington. China reported no new locally transmitted COVID-19 cases yesterday for the first time since July, according to its National Health Commission, as authorities double down on the country's stringent zero-COVID approach. China has been grappling with the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant since the 20th of July, when a cluster of COVID-19 infections were detected among airport cleaning staff in the eastern city of Nanjing.
The United States is being pressured to allow more time for evacuation from Taliban-controlled Afghanistan as the deadline for its withdrawal nears.
Under an agreement with the Taliban, the US must leave by the 31st of August. But France, the UK and Germany all raised the possibility of allowing more time ahead of the emergency meeting of G7 leaders, which is scheduled to take place later today. An official told foreign media that US President Joe Biden is set to decide within the next 24 hours whether to extend the timeline for withdrawal. However, the Taliban have told the BBC that any extension would violate the agreed deal and warned of consequences if forces remained. Tens of thousands of people have been evacuated from the Afghan capital Kabul, but others seeking to flee remain crammed in or near the city's airport, which is guarded by US forces and their allies. An anti-Taliban resistance group in Afghanistan says it has thousands of people ready to fight. Ali Nazari, the head of foreign relations for the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, told foreign media they want to pursue peaceful negotiations. But he added, quote, "If this fails, then we're not going to accept any sort of aggression," end quote. Meanwhile, the Taliban say they have surrounded the group's Panjshir Valley stronghold and put them under siege. Resistance figures have also said the Taliban are now advancing in the region northeast of the capital, Kabul. Amrullah Saleh, who was vice president in the government ousted by the Taliban and is now based in Panjshir, tweeted that the Taliban had massed forces near the entrance to the valley. The Panjshir region, in particular the Panjshir Valley, is famous for having successfully fought off invasions, including from Soviet forces during the Soviet-Afghan War from 1979 to 1989 and the Taliban in the 1990s.
US Vice President Kamala Harris has hit out at China during a speech made in Singapore on the first leg of the Southeast Asia tour.
Harris accused Beijing of coercion and intimidation in the South China Sea, which has been a regional flashpoint for years. Harris's trip is seen as an attempt to reaffirm US commitment to the region. Her speech, which touched on a number of other issues, also mentioned the US pullout from Afghanistan, where she insisted the decision was courageous and right. On China, Kamala Harris criticized its claims to the vast majority of the South China Sea, which she said were based on intimidation and coercion.
Scientists say that the heavy rainfall behind deadly flooding in Europe in July was made more likely by climate change.
The floods in Germany, Belgium and other parts killed at least 220 people as towns and villages were swamped. Researchers say global heating made rainfall events like this up to 9 times more likely in Western Europe. Downpours in the region are 3 to 19% more intense because of human-induced warming. The dramatic and deadly floods that hit Germany, Belgium and elsewhere in mid-July were a shock to weather forecasters and local authorities. Lives were swept away and houses, motorways and railway lines destroyed by the rapidly rushing waters.
And finally, on to your sports news. Pakistan Cricket Board has accepted Afghanistan Cricket's board request to postpone next month's ODI series due to players' mental health issues, disrupting the flight operations in Kabul, lack of broadcast facilities and increased COVID-19 cases in Sri Lanka.
Round the wicket and crashing into off-stump.
Afghanistan's 3-match ODI series against Pakistan has been postponed indefinitely after talks between the two boards concluded that logistical challenges were making it tough for the Afghanistan contingent to travel to Sri Lanka, and the situation in Afghanistan would not have left their players in a good mental space.
That's a good shot. One bounce and it skims.
The Afghanistan contingent was supposed to travel to Pakistan by road, then fly to Dubai and then on to Colombo for the series. However, the circuitous route has thrown up logistical challenges because of the COVID-19 protocols.
This is magic from Nabi.
The PCB tweeted that both boards will try to reschedule the series in 2022.
And with that, we wrap up lunchtime news here on TV1. For more news, log on to our award-winning website, that is www.newsfirst.lk. For the Newsfirst team, I'm David Paldano. Take care.